Hi, welcome to the Jon Gaunt podcast, another one of my set piece interviews. Today I'm going to be speaking to Howard Cox, founder of the Fair Fuel campaign, but also he stood to be the London mayor against Sadiq Khan. Boo, hiss. He's also stood to be an MP for Reform. He also had a big spat with your main man, Nigel Farage. So we'll get some of the dirt on all that. But we'll talk about the fact that he's just told me off the record, which was a bit of a mistake. He said he's in love with fossil fuels. Can't tell you how weird that is to find somebody who wants to be interviewed in the British media whose starting line is, I'm in love with fossil fuels. So let's start there. No further ado. Here he is, Howard Cox. Hi, Howard.
Hello, my good friend. How are you?
I'm very well. Long time no speak. You're in love with fossil fuels? What on earth do you mean by that?
Well, that's my little provocative statement to say that the whole of the planet can't exist without fossil fuels. And until there is a viable, cheaper alternative and a cheaper, efficient alternative, I'm going to continue to promote them and advocate them. And that's why I joke about I'm in love with them. I can't be falling in love with an electric vehicle that won't go further than 150 miles and takes 4 hours to charge up.
Well, it looks like the rest of the UK population are with you on that because the sales of EVs are falling off the cliff. Mr. Miliband would be against you, though, wouldn't he? Because he's in love with his winds.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the problems we have with Ed Miliband is actually he's pushing through various things only with subsidies and incentives and draconian bans, a 2030 ban. Those are the sorts of things. This is not a free market anymore. And what is so sad about particularly with diesel, was we're still the highest, even though Fairfuel UK has managed to win a freezing duty for 15 years, diesel particularly is the highest taxed in the world here.
Incredible. Now, of course, a man who would support you in all this is in Scotland at the moment, Donald Trump, and he's actually said overnight that he hates those windmills. He told Angela Van Leyen, as I call her, or Van Lying, from the EU, that he hates wind farms. So you've got a big supporter there. And of course, he's famous for frack, baby, frack.
Yeah, drill, baby, drill. Absolutely. And this is the point, you see, until I don't know what you want to call these other alternative fuels are, they sustainable, they're natural because, all those words, all pretty words, all, huggable words you can use to say how wonderful. And us people that drive a diesel or a petrol, we're the pariah of all pariahs. The simple thing is, until we get to the stage where things are efficient and there's a national grid that can actually support EVs, and we can charge them up in 10, 15 minutes. Forget it. It's not going to, no one's going to take that on board. And the most important of all, and this is the important thing that people forget, the commercial heartbeat of every economy is diesel. I mean, something like, something delivered to your studio or delivered to my house here cannot go anywhere but on the back of a diesel truck at the moment. And my daughter happens to be an HGV driver. She drives 44 ton articulated trucks. And we joke about it. I said, how big would the battery have to be to drive a 44 ton truck? It would have to the size of the articulated lorry. Go
so
figure.
You don't see 2030, 2035 happening then. Do you see Starmer being forced into a position where he has to drop all this nonsense? I mean, we've had Jaguar now dropping the electric then. Can you see that happening?
Well, more and more major international car manufacturers, are recognising they're keeping the fossil fuel line going. I was in touch with a major manufacturer only about 3 months ago who happened to be in charge of a major production line in this country. And they've only mothballed the fossil fuel side of it, but they've now been told quite categorically by their head office in Japan to say simply this. It's very simple. Open it up again, because I'm afraid we're not selling enough EVs. And as I repeat, this is the thing about it. Clean fuel technology was evolving with fossil fuels. We were Euro 1, 2, 3, 4. We've hit Euro 6. And, HGV industry, the trucking industry, had halved its emissions in the last 10 years. If we'd carried on that evolution to Euro 7, Euro 8 sort of thing, we'd have virtually no emissions. And do you know, I just don't understand it. You know, the reason why I stood in London as London Mayor was stop the ULEZ expansion,
Yeah,
and
sure.
that was based on a lie, total lie. 4,000 people dying. It's an absolute lie. One person was actually attributed to actually dying of any bad, air pollution, and that is a bit debatable because that person had chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, severe asthma, and lived by the South Circular.
But you didn't win, did you? You failed quite miserably in London, if we're being honest with you. Sadiq Khan, the man's unstoppable. I don't like the guy, but he's unstoppable. Why?
Well, there's a lot of reasons for that. When I was asked by Richard Tice and Nigel Farage to stand as London Mayor, and I've got no bitterness towards them, and we'll come on to that in a minute. But fundamentally, I was brought on because of my. I was reasonably well popular in the media in terms of the issue about fuel duty, obviously, and I was approached by a lot of people, the ULEZ supporters, and you know, you've heard about the Blade Runners chopping down cameras and things, all those sorts of things, which I don't advocate, but I actually see the frustration of why they did it. ULEZ expansion was based on a lie. You know, from Imperial College even admitted that by introducing ULEZ, it wouldn't lower or improve the air quality. And the thing about this is that our air is cleaning up. And I just don't understand why Sadiq Khan went into this situation to actually alienate so many people. We're seeing cycle lanes the size of HGV trucks.
Yeah.
We're blocking the whole of London. You know, just go down the embankment regularly on that sort of thing. You know, and I get fed up the back tail. I'm pro cycling, but I'm anti them being made, dedicated.
Just quickly then on that, what about a pedestrianisation of the main shopping street, Oxford Street?
Well, there's no need for it. People walk down the pavements are wide enough anyway, and that's going to impact. Well, they're saying buses can get through, so it's not really pedestrian, but taxis aren't. So I don't understand the logic. Who's behind TfL and how they do this sort of thing? Because all it does is alienate people and impact on local business.
So why does he keep getting in? Let's tackle the elephant in the room. Is it because he is a Muslim?
Well, that absolutely. And
have we got sectarian voting is what I'm asking.
Well, yes, there's no doubt about it. I mean, he only got 18% of the vote. I got 3.5%. I came fifth out of about 14, and I had no chance getting through. And that's one thing where I fell out with the Reform, because they didn't really help at all. I was used a bit to be, you know, which is not a problem. I'm quite happy to be used. I'm used by a lot of people. But fundamentally, what is very, 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 very sad, and this is what really upsets me, is that there are people I met when I was canvassing. I went around 12 hours a day around London in my campaigning, and I met people, and I met shop owners, lovely Muslim shop owners, but they boasted they had 10 voting cards with their name, their surname and their first name and their middle name, all in different positions, and they voted them. And they were all Muslims. And I don't care what people say, if I'm going to be arrested for saying this, he only got in because of the Muslim vote.
And do you believe there was large-scale corruption? I'm sure you're not suggesting that he's directly involved, and we couldn't possibly have that because he's not here to defend himself. But you think there's large-scale corruption in that community, do you, when it comes to voting?
I think yes, it's fraudulent. It was that what happened there. The people exploited it. They wanted to get him in because they wanted basically a Muslim mayor back in again. We had no chance of that man. He was hell bent on, and most of the political elite, or should I say, the people who the cycle fraternity, the people in London who are very comfortable, got fantastic public transport, no problem at all. And they forgot about the people down in Orpington, in Bromley, or up in Enfield, or all of those sorts of places who have to rely on their own cars and things to get around the place.
And
specifically white van man. You imagine a plumber coming along on an underground with a load of, copper pipes and all these tools. He's not going to do it, is he? And that's why a lot of my supporters who joined Fairfield UK are white van man, who now say they don't bother going to London because it costs them about nearly 30 quid in congestion charge and ULEZ charges and all these things for their diesel. And they go do a quote, they don't get it. What's the point?
Okay, you're watching and listening to the Jon Gaunt Show. Today, my special guest, Howard Cox from the Fair Fuel campaign, stood to be London Mayor as well. Let's now just talk a little bit more about Sadiq Khan. Of course, I mentioned earlier that Trump's in the country. Well, he's in Scotland, of course. Khan hates him. Should Khan shut up so we can get proper deals with Donald Trump? And, well, but then again, what about the cabinet? Lammy accused him a few years ago of being a member of the KKK almost. What do you make of the reaction to Trump, and what's your views on Trump? Is he a force for good for the world?
Well, thank God he won. Imagine having Biden in there now, even if he can remember where he's sitting. I mean, the problem with
Did you say sitting?
Yeah,
Carry on.
I'm sorry.
Carry on.
You just broke up a bit. Sorry. Yeah, Donald Trump. Donald Trump is an acquired taste, no doubt about it. And some of the things he does, you do think, like when he was sitting there with the president of the Ukraine. You're sitting there, think, oh my God, what's he doing in the Oval Room and insulting him like that? But in the end, I think people woke up to what he was trying to do. I've got a lot of time for Donald Trump for what he's trying to do for the world. That is, we could stand on our own 2 feet, and we shouldn't be waiting for America to, hold everything, especially in Europe. I mean, Europe is a complete and utter basket case from what's going on with that. But it's going back to the Sadiq Khan situation. Do you remember he had that big helium inflated balloon?
Oh, the inflatable, yeah.
Of Trump I think in a nappy, wasn't it, or something like that?
Yeah.
But that's how pathetic certain people are. You don't do that in this professional age.
No. So obviously he's in Scotland at the moment. Today, Starmer's going to hot-foot it there from watching the football last night, because we're recording this on Monday, but everybody, and of course the women won, and we're all delighted for that. But yes, it's good news. So he's hot-footing it to Scotland to meet him at one of his golf courses. They're then driving to the new golf course, and so what's the agenda? You'd think it might be free speech with the police now policing our tweets. You might think it's the riots. You might think it's Epping. No, the agenda is Gaza. Now, Gaza's important, I accept, but surely Starmer and Trump should be talking about the big issue. Number one issue in the country at the moment, immigration, both legal and illegal. What do you think?
You're absolutely right. I couldn't agree more with you. The reason why he's being forced to talk about Gaza is about 225 of his MPs have written to him saying to do it, and they're trying to deflect on the immigration issue because they've got a load of Muslim voters on their side, and obviously the Muslim voters support Palestine area, so Palestine hate the Jews, hate the Israeli IDF, all that sort of thing, and he's just being forced into it. And as I said, I think I read this morning, I think it was the Telegraph, I think Trump said it's not just down to me, Gaza, it's down to everyone, particularly in Europe. And again, don't rely on him to do the dirty work. And Starmer, I mean, we could spend a whole 12 hours, John, talking on what that man's done wrong, and the reason why he's in place is simply because we had a bad Tory government, an appalling Tory government. And I'm a Thatcherite. That's who I am. It runs through my veins. Margaret Thatcher, what she did to make this country a proud nation, and what those two, the Uni Party, Tory and Labour, have done to this country is unforgivable. Hence the reason. And that's the reason why Reform is doing well.
Okay, and we'll go to Reform in a minute. Do you think, are we seeing the end of the Conservative Party and Labour perhaps during this period? Because we've now got Jeremy Corbyn as the spectre at the feast, haven't we? And Sultana.
Yes. Yes.
She's an MP for Coventry. But anyway, carry on.
I've got a begrudging respect for Jeremy Corbyn. I've met him a few times, and I know his brother Piers Corbyn quite well. And whether you like them or not, at the end of the day, they are consistent in what they do.
Absolutely.
I long for a true, proper socialist party that is objective. I've got no problem with that. I mean, I was a fan.
Do you think he'll do well?
Well, he has already. He's not got members, but he's getting hundreds of thousands of people. Signing up to say, yeah, we like what you're doing. Let's tick a box on going online, as we alluded to earlier. The thing is about Starmer is that, he's got this massive majority, but his massive majority is coming from people that actually have got sympathy for Corbyn as well. And so I think that's going to split. We already know the Tory party's split now, mainly because of Reform's coming on the scene, etc. But, in fact, the right of this country, there's about 10 parties. UKIP, you got the Heritage Party. You go on forever.
Well, I want to talk about that right side in a moment, but just go back to Corbyn, because you said about him, and the thing about Corbyn is he's authentic, isn't he? Like, I've got a begrudging respect for people like George Galloway. At least you know where he stands. Whereas, hasn't that been the mistake of Starmer this whole miserable 12 months? It's just not authentic. Nobody believes a bloody word that comes out of his mouth. That's why he's the most unpopular PM on record. And I don't know how he's going to pull that back. Do you?
No, I don't. But the point is, it's simple as this. He's lied and lied and lied. His manifesto is written by Enid Blyton. The whole thing, from his point of view, coming on, the only good thing I can say, and I have to give them credit for this, I was shocked in the budget of last year, they kept fuel duty frozen. I was fighting like mad, thinking, oh, well, here the Tories are finished now. We're going to see fuel duty go up. And it is the longest freeze in any excise fuel tax in the world. And that's down to what we did at Fairfuel UK. And I'm very proud of that. And I expected Rachel Reeves to put it up, but she didn't. She instead, in fact, I was told by a front bench Labour guy quietly, he nudged me when I was walking through Westminster Hall. He said, "Hello, well done on Fairfield UK. You've done it again." He said, he said, to be honest, but don't rest on your laurels, Hal, because it was either you or the farmers. And we decided to take on the farmers. And that's the patheticness of this. They don't see the whole bigger picture of taxation.
What's weird is the way they took on the farmers, they took on the pensioners, and then almost kicked disabled people out of their wheelchairs. I mean, that's not socialism, is it?
No, absolutely not. And, we keep hearing things like now that Reform are now the home of the working man, the working person, and that sort of thing. Hang on a second. Nigel Farage is, a blue-collar worker, so, that's absolutely rubbish. And those who understand what blue collar was, I mean, we go back a long way in that respect.
A lot of people don't know what that means. You're right. Okay, I'm talking to Howard Cox. We're going to go on to Farage in a couple of moments, and your tiff with, if it's a tiff, with Reform, the fact you're now working with Ben Habib. It's all coming up in the Jon Gaunt podcast. If you're enjoying it, please press the like button. That's the most important thing you can do for me. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook, but press the like button, because then the algorithm spreads this further. And if you want to donate, you can buy me a coffee at www.buymeacoffee.com/Jon Gaunt, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can press the $ and donate as well. Dead simple to give me money. I've tried to make it as easy as possible. Now then, if we can, Howard, let's just then, talking about Starmer, you mentioned Rachel Reeves. How useless has she been? And what did you think, your father, what did you think when she cried in the House of Commons? And be honest.
I'm going to be honest. I have massive sympathy for her. She was, I do. I mean, my wife and I were watching PMQs. In fact, my wife picked it up first. She said, "Howard, I think she's got a tear in her eye," and she was, she's sort of a swallow going, and I was shocked by it. And next to her was this most. Well, what someone should have said to her, "Are you okay? Can we stop for a minute?" or something like that.
Nobody did.
The Prime Minister doing that, he would have got a lot of respect for that. But no, he carried on, and he carried on denying it. Yes, I have sympathy, but I don't have sympathy for her ability, because she's useless.
Thank you. Listen, he lied, didn't he, when he said he never knew she was crying?
Oh,
I mean, for God, my wife's not talking to me when we've got... it's like TV. We've got pictures but no sound. You know what I mean? Don't you pick up on colleagues? No.
Well, I would have thought so, because every PMQs, I'm sure that most of the cabinet meet up a bit beforehand somehow. In fact, I know they do, and they sit and talk to you. So what's going on? And they must have recognised whether it was a personal incident or not. They should have said, "Look, sit this one out, and we're coming and we'll talk about it later." Okay. She's going through a bad thing, something happened. You don't wish that on anyone. But the fact is, Rachel from accounts, we all joke about it, and that thing, the things, and she lied on her CV and about, what she did in the job wise. Yet again, lie after lie after lie. We see it all the time. The fact is, she's the most incompetent person running the finances of our country. And I'm scared stiff. I work very closely with a guy, he's now retired now, who was chair of the CEBR, the Centre of Economic Business Research, a guy called Douglas McWilliams. He's quite well known. He was actually advisor to George Osborne millions of years ago. He's one of the first people to come and help me. I gave him some business, his company business, to prove that cutting fuel duty is actually an incentive for growth of this economy. But no, most governments don't see that when they're in government. Backbenchers do, but as soon as they become on the front bench, they suddenly think,
change, don't they? I think it's something in the water in Downing Street or in something. Anyway, we should leave it there. Just going back for a moment to you saying about Starmer, he might have got a bit of respect if he said, "Are you okay, love?" Not love, obviously. Are you okay? But he doesn't do empathy. He doesn't do sympathy, because I don't know if you saw the Southport One Day in Southport documentary, incredible piece of TV, mainly if you haven't seen it yourselves, guys. There's no narration, it's just people's mobile cameras, and this guy stitched it all together, and I thought he was pretty fair with it as well. But there's a brilliant bit 12 minutes into it when Starmer arrives to lay the wreath for the photo op with that useless chief constable who didn't give us any information as well. He lays the wreath, and then you hear one woman say, "How many more of our children, Prime Minister?" And then somebody else says, "You're a wanker." And then it builds. And then he heads back to the car. And this is the thing you didn't get when the BBC and Sky, and I'm not having a go at them, but in their coverage, you didn't get the panic that was there. But because it was mobile phones, that Range Rover took off at about 70 miles an hour. It was obviously diesel or petrol. It wouldn't have been electric. Woof! It went. And then, since then, came the shutters. Didn't say anything for 48 hours or whatever, and the riots happened. I hold him not responsible, but partially responsible. And I'm not alone, because the government terrorism czar has said the same thing. You leave an information vacuum, it'll be filled with extremists. And then when he called them far-right thugs, I thought it was outrageous. And it was just like, he missed. Imagine Blair in that circumstance. Blair would have gone over, and that big working class lady who said, she screams, "My friend's just been in touch, and it was her daughter who died, right? Who got killed yesterday."
Yeah.
Blair would have been over there, metaphorically or literally, putting his arm around her. Take politics out of it. Starmer can't do that. And that's another reason why he's not a leader.
Oh, absolutely. That particular day, I remember seeing it, walking along with that. It was almost like a robot carrying those flowers. And I'm staggered. I am amazed. We're in a situation now, because of his big majority, he's impossible to remove, unless he kills someone or something like that. But what his policies and what he's doing to this country, he's wrecking this country. And when I hear, again, I'm going back to Rachel Reeves, we've stabilised the economy. With inflation up, unemployment up, GDP down, all those sorts of things going on. And when my inbox is flooded, I get 2,000 or 3,000 emails a week from people, drivers, and saying, I can't afford this, can't afford to do that. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. And when he stands at that dispatch box and keeps saying, "We inherited the bad thing from the Tories," he can stop that now. That's gone now. 22 billion black hole, which they've invented. The whole thing, as far as I'm concerned, is a fraud. And I've been talking to legal people about how can we actually rid us of this man, because there must be some way. It's a bit like Sadiq Khan. I've tried very hard to actually find out, because he's actually issued lie after lie after lie in terms of what he's saying, and he doesn't like Starmer. Khan doesn't answer the questions. They don't. You ask him a direct questions, what's going on? He immediately turns it back onto the opposition.
Well, Prime Minister's questions is no longer Prime Minister's questions, because he never gives a bloody answer. I don't think he's given an answer in the whole time he's been Prime Minister. It's an affront to democracy. That's what that is. But he is the Prime Minister, and some would say, is very good at foreign affairs. Foreign affairs, not affairs. Anyway, what do you think? No, come on. We're not going there. He's very strong on Ukraine, isn't he, in particular? And he says the whole of the country's behind him. He's told Zelensky. I'm not sure that's true. But he'll love the limelight today with Trump. I mean, the way he was in the Oval Office, and then giving the letter from the bloody king when the king hadn't given him permission to do that.
Well, this is the point. I mean, I actually feel that JD Vance and because he's been picking up the business, the vice president he's been picking up the issue about freedom of speech, and I honestly think Donald Trump will say to him today, "What the hell are you doing about immigration, and what the hell are you doing about freedom of speech?" We've introduced another thing. He's instructed police to set up these new departments to actually focus on people who talk about anything against immigration issues and that sort of thing. And I'm surprised I'm not in jail. I mean, I visited Tommy Robinson in jail. We'll come on to that, but I'm surprised with the tweets and my social media. Well, I'm not been arrested yet.
I agree myself. I'm ready for it. I'm going to get my fighting fund going. But you'd think it's a cliche, but don't police the tweets, police the streets. Do the things that ordinary people want. The very people that you very much like calling the working people, because he doesn't like the word class, the working people who bloody elected you want you to deal with. And he refuses to. I mean, then look at what's happened with the migrant hotels, Epping, and he's doing the same thing. He's trying the silent act again. And then yesterday, although the mainstream media aren't really covering it, there were demonstrations, protests, trouble in several locations right across the disunited kingdom. He's got to get a hold of it because the weather's going to get warmer and there is a danger of riots. Even he's warned about it, and Rayner, and then they buggered off on holiday.
Well, you hit the nail on the head there, John, because those demonstrations that happened across the country probably back in the last week, mostly are demonstrations of decent people, decent families. Decent, you see the mothers in Eppington. You see, he would get some respect, even if he would get a lot of insult, if he went down there with his police protection to say and stand in and talk to those mothers. And say, let's get to the bottom of this. And I think, as you say, even Tony Blair, unfortunately, I did vote for Tony Blair back in 1997. It's my only slight aberration.
So did I voted for him because I made this point on a podcast the other day. When he first got elected, Blair, it's interesting that Oasis are back and the Gallagher brothers. There was all that cool Britannia stuff, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And it did feel like there was change. There's no excitement about Starmer at all. No excitement whatsoever. I mean, good news last night, the women winning. But apart from that, nothing good's happened since he's been in power. He's got the Midas touch in reverse. Everything he touches turns to shit.
Yeah, but then he's talking about how his wonderful breakfast clubs he's given to people. Yeah. He forgets that the taxpayer's paying for that for a start, and we didn't ask for that. And if you have kids, you should bring up your kids and give them breakfast. We can go. I just can't believe how he says where the breakfast clubs and care. Well, there's certain things he's got about 3 things he says, which probably contribute, 0.1% of any effectiveness of what he's done. The rest, the 99.9%, it's been, excuse me, but 5HIT shit.
The other thing is as well, I love the way he says we gave everybody workers on the lowest pay, we gave them all a pay rise. Well, I agree with the minimum wage going up, but you didn't give it them. The bloody firms are giving it them. And as a result of it, because I know I've got people who work in hospitality's going to the wall. They can't afford what you've done. Oh, I took a penny off a pint. You took a penny off the pint, but you put the NI up for the employers. Sorry. So the guy lives in a fantasy land, almost a sort of la-la land. And then, of course, there's also all this other stuff around him. The free suits, the Taylor Swift tickets. Obviously, he had to go to the football last night. I'm not going to hold that against him. There's just a sniff about him, isn't there? There's a smell about him, which, I don't know, just don't feel right to me.
Well, there's 2 people that are actually very much senior people in the Labour Party, our Prime Minister and the Mayor of London. And I'm going to say it quite here. They're both pathological liars. And I don't care. You can take me to court for saying that, and I'm willing to sit around the table to prove that they are. So I've got facts to prove it, particularly in the London area, about what they're doing. The thing is, it's a bit like the waspy women and things like that. I've got a daughter she's getting married to. She's gay, and she's getting married to a girl next year, and her family have been subjected to this blood issue, that sort of thing, and they're still not. It's a bit like the post office; they're still waiting for their payments. All these things he's saying he's doing things. Why not give these people what they deserve? He's borrowing something like, I worked out, it's £8,000 per second. Per second they're borrowing. Okay, at the moment in time to keep our country afloat.
To be fair, though, he did inherit some of that. The waspy women, the post office, etc., from that useless Conservative government who had so many prime ministers, culminating, I think, in a lettuce. I mean, they were just terrible. I mean, they were just terrible as well. And that's why I say a pox on all their houses. And so that brings us, I suppose, logically onto Farage. Is Farage, and you know him, and I know him, as you know, is he going to be the next Prime Minister?
I think there's nothing stopping him at the moment except the
Himself.
point. Well, no, I've got a huge respect for Nigel Farage. I really have. He's a friend. I've known him. He came in and supported Fairfield UK back in 2015. That's 10 years ago. Yep. I met him in a pub in Mayfair. Where else? And we had a good drink, and he had his cigarettes and he had his beer with me. We're in the bar talking about things. And he asked me to write something about. I said, look, put in your manifesto. And at the time, it was the European elections, you know, for the Brexit Party. And to cut a long story short, he said, what do you want, Howard? I said, 20p cut in fuel duty. That's what we want. So that's a 10 quid cheaper for every tank, for every family car I want to do. He said, right, it's in there. And I thought, okay, obviously, you know, the Tories would like to have done it on the backbench, but they couldn't do it. But we got that freeze. I can't complain about that because people forget that back in 2010, there's a thing called a fuel price escalator.
Yes, there was.
Which meant pump prices were going to go up by inflation, 2p plus inflation, those sorts of things. So if they had carried on, if you extrapolate, we'd be paying something like £2.50 per litre now. That's the sort of thing, and that's what we stopped. Obviously, I'm accused because I've stopped £200 billion of tax rises could have spent on the National Health Service, but that's not the point. What's happened is those people stayed in business. People could go and see their families. There's so much need. Something like 87% of all car traffic is outside of urban areas. They can't live without it. The public transport's terrible. So those are sorts of things. So you know, we're talking about a lot of things at the moment in time that all come back to it. And Nigel was very kind to me. Richard Tice, who at the time was leader of the party, Nigel wasn't even leader when I was asked to become. Had he been leader when I was standing for mayor, I think I might have done better because I stood there to try and get more people onto the assembly. That's how it works. The more votes you get, and we got one on there, a guy called Alex Wilson, who's a good guy, but I gave up my number one position to allow him to get in there. And that's the sort of thing I do because it's more important to get the right people on board. And Nigel said that was a silly thing you did, Howard. You should have stayed on it. I said no. That guy is a good worker, etc. And I don't want to sit in an assembly where Sadiq Khan doesn't answer questions and I'm about as useful as a chocolate teapot.
So you think Farage could be Prime Minister, but wouldn't it fall apart? I mean, there is this sort of feeling that he falls out with everyone. You're one of the victims. There's been others along the line. Ben Habib, Rupert Lowe, for example. What is it that doesn't tie them together? I mean, I know I've had some experience of this when I ran that anti-EU campaign, trying to get them all together around a table to talk, and it was like getting rats in a sack. It was almost impossible. And it was like the Monty Python sketch, you know, the Judea party or whatever. So how's he going to do it? And does the fault lie with him in the end?
Well, it's funny. I got to know Nigel a little bit, but no one really gets to know him. I think Nigel's only in it for Nigel, and that's the sadness about it because he's a brilliant communicator, a brilliant, consummate professional in communication. The
best in political circles.
Yeah, the number of speeches I've been to see him do with no prompts, no teleprompts, no notes, and they're spellbinding. He's a great mass hypnosis speciality is what he's good at with people, and I know a lot of people I've got a lot of respect for are very sad that what's happened to me. But what happened was simple. I got a great deal of congratulations from standing as London mayor, and on the day of the election when I put my ballot box voting to vote for myself in Westminster for that point, there was no one from Reform headquarters with me. No cameras, nothing. The only person that turned up was Rupert Lowe. And he came on, and I'll never, ever forget that. Rupert came in and stood by, Howard, you're not getting the support. Let me come in and give you some. And he got his own phone out, took some pictures of me, which were published in the press and the local TV and on, etc. That's one thing. The other thing also is that in terms of actually going around the whole of, we didn't have a huge amount of money. And again, Nigel wasn't leader. I wasn't getting the support from the headquarters when I was canvassing all the way around London, all the way up from Islington up to Enfield, as I say, down to Croydon, all those places where I was going around. It's a bloody hard campaign, I promise you that, to do that. Sure. but I had massive support, and I went to every single ULEZ protest in Trafalgar Square, all those sorts of things. And okay, so I lost. But the next thing happened is they asked me to stand down in Dover, because that's the front line of immigration.
Oh, she did, yeah.
And,
As an MP,
and I said, yeah, okay. And so I carried, and that was obviously, at that point, we had Nigel as leader. And obviously that gave us a boost because of the appalling nature of and performance of the Tory party. So, you know, the government, everyone was anti them. They wanted to change. But those Tories were now moving slightly to Nigel, thinking, oh, why not? I came second. I knocked the Tories into third place. I got
how much did you lose by? Do you mind me asking how many votes you lost by?
I got 23%. Mike Tapp, he won it, and he'd been campaigning for 2.5 years. I've been campaigning for 3.5 weeks.
Okay.
Had I another couple of months, I think I would have nicked it. But I think he got 32. I got 23%. And the
now
Tories,
he's constantly on GB News, isn't he?
yeah. Well, he is a sycophant of Starmer. He's after a position. The next, you know, he wants a ministerial position.
Okay, so you fell out with Reform. Why are you with Ben Habib? And also, the other thing I don't understand is Rupert Lowe involved in this new party? What's it called? Advantage Chemist or something, isn't it?
Advanced UK.
What's it called?
Advanced UK.
It just reminds me of a bloody pharmacy. It's just ludicrous name. But anyway, good luck to them. And I like Ben Habib, but they ain't got a chance of getting elected. And I get people on my podcast emailing in saying, why are you supporting Farage? Why are you supporting Reform?
Yeah.
If you've got to support Ben Habib and Rupert Lowe, well, because they ain't going to get elected, are they? They haven't got a chance of forming a government. And I'm so fed up of the country at the moment. I need a government where I think, oh, at least I'll give them a chance. And I think that man is Farage.
Well, it's an irony. I mean, we can go into this a lot of depth, but just me go back one step before I answer that. When I finished with Reform, you know, I came second, etc. I was interviewed by Dan Wootton about various things, and he brought up Tommy Robinson.
Yeah,
and I said, I've got huge respect for Tommy Robinson, what he's done. I don't care about what he's done in his past and who he is, or he's rough and ready or something like that. Far from it. The child rape gangs. He's the one that's brought that to to a fore, you know, etc. And I've got nothing but admiration for what he's done there. That's what I said. Then I got this private WhatsApp from Richard Tice, and he said, Howard, if you continue to talk about supporting Tommy Robinson, you will be expelled from the party. And I said, what? What are you talking about? This is freedom of speech. I have not said anything bad about Reform. I've simply said there's a man who's actually highlighted our kids are being raped systematically by Pakistani child rape gangs. Please, you know, what's wrong with that? No, if you say that, you're going to be expelled. So I spoke to Ben Habib on the phone. He said, Howard, get out first. Because by that time, Ben Habib had been removed because of Zia Youssef that came in, who's as chair, you know. And again, that's another thing, another Muslim, by the way. It's come into the party, and Nigel's quite clever in doing things, but I think he's got this one wrong. But anyway, to cut a long story short, that and then Richard Tice was interviewed, and he came out with this fantastic phrase, didn't he? He said, when they asked him about Tommy Robinson, he said, I don't want to have anything to do with that lot. And I'm one of that lot, because I've spoken at rallies for Tommy, and I've visited him in prison, etc. And Ben Habib had some differences with Nigel about the professionalism of the party, legitimacy, and the democratization of the party.
Yeah, I remember.
Because there was a limited company with he was the power. He could control anything. He could do what he wants. That's hardly a political democracy, and that's the problem. And so I sat with Ben for, you know, we had lunch and chatted about things, and I liked what he said, what Ben said. And I said, okay, what are you going to do? He said, well, in the long term, we want to set up a party. We know we've got a long way to go. He's one of the most sensible people you'll ever meet. And him and Rupert, you know, you saw the thing about Rupert was, you know, he's accused of having dementia. He's abused Zia and all those sorts of things.
Very dirty.
And Rupert is probably one of the most popular MPs in this country. And I don't just mean Great Yarmouth, I mean across the whole of the country. And as I said to you, he was there on that day supporting me on the day of my election. He's a good man. The two of them disagree slightly, Ben and Rupert, on the way forward. It's going to merge, Ben believes that we need the party because you can only make a difference at the ballot box, and Rupert believes we need a movement first.
Okay, so why doesn't Farage and Tice want anything to do with Tommy Robinson? What's the reason they're giving? And is it because they're worried that it's going to play badly in the middle ground? What is their problem? Because certainly now with the migrant hotel chaos, and before that, as you say, the Muslim Pakistani rape gangs, many people who would not traditionally be Tommy Robinson supporters are now recognising what you just said. He's the man who's brought it to the fore. So what's their problem?
Well, it goes back a long way. There's a lot of, I think, a trail of blood, political blood and friendship blood and all the other things. The English Defence League, we can go back to all those sorts of things. Goes back. And Gerard Batten is probably one person you should interview because he was head of UKIP.
Yeah,
and he'll tell you about Nigel. And he says about the Tommy Robinson thing. He's probably more closer to what happened in those days between Nigel and the Tommy situation. And it's pretty, you heard recently that when I think he was on GB News talking to Martin Daubney, Nigel Farage, when I think he said, would you have Rupert Murdoch? Rupert Murdoch, that's a slip. Rupert Lowe back in the party, or Ben Habib. He said, I'd rather swallow razor blades.
Yeah.
What's going on? Is that let's think about the people and what's happening to this country first, please. And that's what Ben is doing and Rupert are doing.
So do you believe then the only person who could lose the election is Nigel Farage himself?
At the moment, yes, but equally, it's still got to be democratised. It's still, I don't know what party it was. Reform UK Limited, then it became Reform 2025, and all sorts of limited. I still don't believe that Nigel. I said when I left the party, I'd be happy to rejoin. I spoke; they wouldn't have me back now, but happy to rejoin if he actually put to the membership. There are 200,000 people that on the ticker tape that kept going up about
sure.
that thing. Please, could you just ask and do a referendum of your own party who should be leader? And then you'd have a mandate, because I'm sure Nigel will be elected. But the point is, he wasn't that point. It was just, I declare myself the leader. And he demoted Richard Tice from leader down to deputy. He dumped Ben Habib because Ben Habib stood up to him about the fact that the party was not being not democratic, etc., etc., etc. And it goes on. And then he picks on Rupert. And now James McMurdoch is dropped out as well.
Yeah, but the thing, going back to Tice for a minute, I mean, Tice has got the charisma of a paper bag, hasn't he? You know what I mean? A recycled paper bag. I mean, you can't compare the two. I mean, Farage will get the votes. And maybe that's what he's worried about with Tommy, that Tommy would be the only serious challenger to him.
Well, John,
do you understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah, well, Tommy actually doesn't want to be part Reform, but he did say, before he went into prison, in the general election last year, please vote for Reform. That's the only option.
Yeah.
And at the moment, if you ask me who I'd vote for now today, I would vote for Reform. Because we've got to get. So I'm in that school of thought.
And you went to see Tommy in prison.
Yep.
Do you believe he was a political prisoner? And do you believe they'll put him back in?
I bloody hope he doesn't go back in. But yes, he was a political prisoner. We're talking about Lucy Connolly and people like that. We can go the guy that committed suicide, Finch, who committed suicide. All those sorts of people, we're seeing it time and time again. We saw it this weekend, wasn't it? A woman with a baby. She's been arrested for just, calling out the Palestinian situation. What is going on? And yet, as you alluded to, the Southport people, the judges even said the people who actually, the people, the defendants, they've got good character as they punch that, policeman's nose.
You're talking about the Manchester case now, aren't you?
Yeah.
We're waiting for the result of that.
Not Southport, yeah, absolutely right. I got that one wrong. But the point is, at the moment, Nigel has got an absolute tidal wave of support because Labour and the Tories are absolutely useless. It's as simple as that. And that's why there needs, and what Ben and I and Rupert as well, and lots of other people, you'll see a lot more is going to come out in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And I think you'll find that Advance UK, and I'll take your point, with a glint of toothpaste in my mouth here.
It's true what I'm saying. Go on, carry on. So go on.
But Advance UK is moving in the right direction. And what Ben has done is trying to get 30,000 people who paid members. And that's what the number of people who actually were supporting Reform before the general election, 30,000 paid members before it becomes registered with the Electoral Commission.
Okay. Before you go, then, last thing to ask you: Britain is broken. I think we'd probably agree on that. More broken. I mean, I was on the Sun when we first used that phrase, but it's never been as broken as this. Can it be mended? Can Britain come back, and how?
Well, I'm sorry to say that I think it's beyond repair at the moment. I'm sad to see it, and the only people that we have. This is why I go back to what I said. This is why Nigel and Reform are doing so well, because they're saying the right things. They're not good. They don't believe in mass deportation and things like that, and which is a sad thing. And there's a lot of other things they're not doing right. But at the moment, I can see only one person that can do anything with this, maybe two people, and that is Ben Habib and Rupert Lowe. If they got together, I think they will get a groundswell of support that actually could really seriously challenge for getting maybe 40 or 50 MPs in Parliament, and that may be a groundswell of actually opportunity for the future.
Interesting stuff. And again, just before you go, you mentioned deportation. Is the only way to stop the boats deportation and secure units?
Absolutely. We just put the Navy out there and stop it. You know, why are we not using our Navy on one of the busiest channels in the country? The Aussies did it. They pulled them back, you know, etc. I know that's a slightly different thing. But
yeah, it's a bigger ocean, but go on.
Yeah, but the fact is, if we put a load of frigates or whatever they're called, I haven't got a clue what you call them, but if you put the Navy out there, that would stop them. Yeah, pick them up and then and put them back in diggers and take them back under gunpoint to the back. I'm sorry, and Macron is taking the piss out of us. You know, this whole thing, taking 700 million from us. You know, for what? And you see the police over there. Okay, when he was coming over, they got the Stanley knife out to slice the old dinghies, but up until then, they'd done nothing.
It was a precedent, wasn't it? And also, as well, you know, if you tell people you're going to end up in a 4-star hotel with, I call it squeezy soap, then they're going to keep coming, aren't they? You've got to say, there's lots of old airfields. Kevin Hurley had him on the other day about this. He was saying there's loads of old airfields, Ministry of Defence property. You can put the people in there with razor wire around it, so they're not going out during the daytime. My wife was telling me she was in Warwick, Leafy, Warwick. They're using a hotel on the corner there. And she said, all these young blokes were walking into town, and she's much more liberal than me. She said, but that's not a good thing for them, is it? Or for us, or for anyone. And it's not.
It's scary what's going on in this country. And your point, I said about putting the Navy out to stop them, for stopping the boats. But you're right. Just don't give them any money, any benefits whatsoever. Tough. Let them starve. I don't care. That's the sort of thing. The ones over here now, and put them around within the razor wire with those camps. Give them a bit of a tent and a canvas to stop them getting wet. Fair enough. But then that stop them coming over. But you've got to get rid of these. You've got to deport these now back to their own countries.
Pretty tough message to end that interview. Thank you very much indeed, Howard. Hold on there. I shall come back to you after I've said goodbye to everybody and done another bit of begging. Wait a minute. Jon Gaunt podcast. My special guest today from the Fair Fuel Alliance, Howard Cox, also a member of the new political party with Ben Habib. I thought it was interesting. We must get Ben Habib on, and also Rupert as well. What do you think about what he had to say about Farage? What do you think about what he just said then about the asylum seekers? How are we going to stop it? Was that too harsh? What about Rachel Reeves? What about Starmer? What about Trump? And what about climate change? And of course, Fair Fuel itself. Without them, we would be paying almost as much for our petrol and diesel as we do for a pint of beer. And is Britain broken beyond repair? Is Howard right? I need your comments. Just comment on the bottom of the YouTube video, or get in touch on Twitter or Facebook. And of course, if you'd like to support me, www.buymeacoffee.com/Jon Gaunt is the way to do it. I'll be back with my regular show. Don't forget, every night of the week, Monday to Thursday at 6:30. Join me then if you can, and in that one you can interact. Thanks for watching the Jon Gaunt podcast. I'll speak to you soon. If you've got kids, give them a kiss, give them a hug. Hey, don't forget to tell them you love them. See ya.